I was setting a small dinner table for myself when my phone buzzed on the counter. The house was still, the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own breath. I wiped my hands on a towel and reached for the phone without thinking much. It was from Nathan. "Mom, Clara prefers to keep Christmas dinner only family. Hope you understand." I stared at the message for a long moment. The screen glow reflected against the glass door, the snow outside gathering in slow, soft piles. It was strange how a few words could cut so clean. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. Family. I stood there, my hand resting on the counter, feeling the cold from the window behind me bleed into the room. The snow pine villa they lived in, the one with the wide porch and the tall windows, was something I had paid off completely. Every brick of it, every inch of their future. I had given it to them freely, foolishly proud of how far they were coming in life. But tonight, somehow, I was no longer family. I lifted the phone again and typed one word, "All right." My hand didn't tremble. My voice didn't crack. It was the calmest I had been in years. I pressed send and set the phone down gently. That single word carried 20 years of excuses, all collapsing at once. The candles on the table flickered from the draft. I looked at the empty chair across from me, the one I had placed out of habit, even though no one had sat there for months. I reached for the small silver snowflake pendant around my neck, feeling the cool metal against my thumb. Henry had given it to me during our last Christmas together, back when the word family meant something steady. I whispered under my breath, "So this is where we are now." I didn't cry. The tears had dried out somewhere along the years of being quietly pushed aside. I just walked to the window and touched the cold glass. Outside, the snow kept falling, gentle and indifferent. It didn't care who was invited or who wasn't. It simply covered everything equally. The phone buzzed again. I didn't look. I didn't need to. I knew it was Clara, offering her sweet, polished tone through the screen, pretending politeness while making sure I understood my place. I turned off the kitchen lights and stood in the dim glow of the hallway lamp. Shadows stretched across the floorboards as I walked to the living room. The house hummed faintly with the heater kicking on, the only warmth in the room. I sat down slowly, letting the silence settle. No shaking, no panic, just a cold clarity slipping into place. My son had used my love to build his life. Clara had used my trust to secure her comfort, and both of them believed I would swallow this humiliation and call it understanding. I looked at the dark window, the reflection of the snow bouncing back at me, and breathed out a quiet sentence. They used my roof, but erased my chair. The words floated in the air for a moment before fading, and with them something inside me hardened, quiet, sharp, final. They wanted a Christmas without me. They would have it. But the cost of that choice had already begun. Marion showed up the next morning before I'd even finished boiling water. She didn't knock loudly, just a soft tap the way old friends do when they know you might be holding yourself together by a thread. I opened the door, and the cold air rushed in behind her. She carried a small box of ginger cookies and a look that told me she already sensed something was wrong. "I brought the ones you like," she said as she stepped inside. Her voice was warm, steady, the kind of voice that lets the room breathe for you when you can't. I tried to smile, but it felt thin. She set the cookies on the counter and reached for 2 mugs without asking. She knew exactly where everything was. That's the thing about friendships built over decades. They don't need explanation. We sat at the table as the steam rose from our cups. Marion cradled hers with both hands, studying me the way only someone who's seen you through every season of your life can. "Something happened," she murmured. I slid my phone across the table. She didn't reach for it right away. She looked at me first, giving me a chance to take it back. I didn't. She finally picked it up. Her eyes skimmed the message. Her jaw tightened. She read it again, slower this time. When she set the phone down, her voice was barely above a whisper. "They really sent you this?" I nodded. She let out a soft, disbelieving breath. "After everything you've done for them." The kettle clicked off in the background, the only sound in the kitchen. I wrapped my hands around my mug, welcoming the heat against my fingers. "I thought it would hurt more," I said quietly. "But it just felt cold." Marian leaned back in her chair, studying me with that sharp intuition she never lost. "Cold can be good. Cold wakes you up." I looked down at the swirl of steam rising from my cup. Maybe I needed waking up. She reached for a cookie, broke it in half, and placed the smaller piece in front of me the way she always had when we were younger. "Nora, you gave them a palace. Maybe they mistook you for the walls." The words hit harder than I expected. Simple, direct, true. I let out a slow breath. Yesterday felt like the final shove out of the picture. "Or the final push to see the picture clearly," she replied. We sat in silence for a moment, both watching the snow gather outside. The light filtering through the window was soft and warm, brushing over the wreath she'd helped me hang last week. Everything in the room looked peaceful, except for the tight ache sitting in my chest. Marian lifted her mug and held it halfway to her lips before pausing. "Nora, I heard something yesterday, at the bank." I looked up sharply. "What kind of something?" She hesitated, then set the mug down gently. "Clara was there, at Snowpine Bank. I only noticed because she was talking to the manager with that smile she uses when she wants something approved quickly." The air in the room shifted. "What was she doing there?" I asked. Marian shook her head. "I didn't hear everything, but I caught her saying something about updating ownership documents." My stomach tightened. "Ownership? Of what?" "I don't know," Marian admitted, but the manager didn't look confused. He looked prepared, like he'd already met with her before. I didn't blink for a long moment. I just let the information settle, slow and heavy. My pulse thudded once in my throat. Marian reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. "I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to warn you." "I know," I murmured. "You've always given," she said softly. "Always forgiven. Always assume the best. But people like Clara, they don't take kindness as kindness. They take it as an opening." I stared at the window, watching the snow gather on the branches outside. The morning light pressed against the glass, warm but distant. Marian squeezed my hand once more before pulling back. "You need to be careful. Check everything. And don't let them convince you you're overreacting." I nodded slowly. "I won't." She finished her coffee and stood, pulling her coat tighter around her shoulders. Before she reached the door, she turned back to me. "You're not as alone in this as you think," she said, "and you're not as powerless as they hope." When the door closed behind her, the house fell silent again. But it wasn't the same silence as last night. This one felt sharper, awake, waiting. I stood at the window for a long moment, watching the snow fall through the morning light. Suspicion had taken root, and now it refused to be ignored. I woke around 2 a.m. without knowing why. The house was quiet, too quiet, as if the walls were holding their breath. I lay still for a moment, staring into the darkness, listening to the low hum of the heater. Something in me felt unsettled, nudged awake by a thought I hadn't finished forming earlier. Marian's words echoed faintly. "Check everything." I sat up slowly. The cold floor met my feet like a warning. I wrapped a sweater around my shoulders and walked to the kitchen, guided only by the faint glow from the stove clock. The snow outside had thickened, covering the yard in clean, untouched white. It made the world look softer, but inside me something felt sharper. I pulled out my laptop from the drawer and set it on the table. For a moment, I just sat there, my hand resting on the lid. I had let Clara handle so many things, brushing it off as convenience. She always framed it that way, sweetly, smoothly, like a daughter doing her mother-in-law a favor. "Let me handle the online bills, Mom. It's easier for you. You don't need to worry about the little expenses. I've got it." Little expenses, little lies. I opened the laptop. The sudden brightness made my eyes squint. I typed in my credentials, ignoring the tremor that tried to follow my fingers. The home page loaded. Everything looked normal at first glance. Too normal. I clicked into my checking account. Slow, steady breaths. Scrolling, scrolling. At first, the transactions blurred together in familiar categories: electricity, water, groceries. Then something caught my eye. Small transfers, spaced out neatly, always under an amount that would trigger alerts. Each labeled with vague descriptions: home maintenance, repair supplies, house, necessities. I frowned. I hadn't approved repairs. There hadn't been any repairs, not in months. I clicked deeper. A small window opened, showing the linked cards. I expected to see only my own. But there it was, a second authorized user. Her name, Clara's name. The world seemed to tilt for a moment. The snow outside blurred into streaks of white. I stared at the screen, letting the truth sink in. She had linked her card to my accounts. Quietly, cleanly, systematically. Not in one bold move. No, she was smarter than that. It was the kind of theft that didn't scream. It whispered. The kind people overlook until nothing is left. My breath tightened, then steadied. I clicked print before my emotions had a chance to rise. The printer hummed softly from across the room, feeding out page after page of evidence. Each sheet slid out with a kind of cold finality, laying their intentions bare. I aligned the pages into a neat stack and set them on the table. Then I scrolled through my retirement account. More transfers, small, repeated, always dressed in innocent descriptions, always just low enough to blend into the noise. My jaw clenched, but my heartbeat stayed steady. Not fear, not rage, just clarity. I opened my savings account next. Same pattern, little cuts, little thefts, little betrayals for months, maybe longer. I leaned back in the chair, the laptop screen casting a pale light on the walls. The framed photos on the shelf looked different now. Vacations I paid for, trips I made possible, smiles I believed were real. They weren't memories anymore. They were artifacts of a story I had been telling myself. I whispered into the empty kitchen. They didn't just push me out. They were taking me apart. The heater clicked off, and the silence wrapped around me again. I watched the snow outside fall in clean sheets, covering everything it touched without judgment. I envied it for a moment. I reached for the printed pages and placed them in a folder. Each one felt heavier than the last, not because of the paper, but because of what it proved. My trust had become someone else's opportunity. I stood and walked to the window, the reflection of the kitchen behind me mixed with the white night outside. For a moment, I saw myself the way someone else might, a woman standing alone in her kitchen, holding the truth in her hands. But I didn't feel alone. I felt awake. My eyes drifted to the silver snowflake pendant resting against my sweater. Henry had always told me to double-check what people called help. He said trust was a gift you give slowly. I had given it too fast, and to the wrong person. I closed the laptop and placed it back in the drawer. The folder of printed evidence slid in beside it. I didn't slam the drawer. I didn't even exhale sharply. I simply closed it with a slow, deliberate push. Tonight wasn't about deciding what to do next. Tonight was about understanding what had already been done. I looked at the cold kitchen one last time before turning off the light. The snow outside kept falling, peaceful and steady. The world looked quiet, but the silence inside me had changed. It wasn't soft anymore. It was focused. They thought they could drain me without consequence. They thought I would never see it. They thought I was still the woman who needed their approval. But tonight, I finally noticed the pattern, and noticing was the first step. I walked back to my room, leaving the darkness behind me with a new kind of calm. Not the helpless kind, the prepared kind. Morning light crept across the kitchen floor when I finally reached for my phone. My thumb hovered over Mr. Ford's contact longer than it should have. He'd managed my finances for years. Quiet, precise, dependable. The kind of man who spoke in numbers and facts, not assumptions. The call connected on the third ring. "Mrs. Ellison? Everything all right?" A simple question, but something in my voice must have shifted because he didn't sound relaxed anymore. I need clarification on some recent account activity. There was a brief pause, then the fast clicking of his keyboard filled the line. Of course. Let me pull up your records. I stood by the window while he worked, watching the snow cling to the branches outside. Everything looked peaceful, clean, deceptively clean, just like Clara's smile. Mr. Ford returned. I'm seeing multiple transfers to home maintenance vendors. Were you aware of these? The word aware landed wrong. Heavy. No, I wasn't. More clicking. His tone tightened. These were processed through a secondary authorized user. The durable authority on file allows her to manage these payments. Durable authority, a term I had never wanted to hear again. I asked for more details. He hesitated for the first time in the years I'd known him. The authorization was signed last spring. The notary was present. The secondary user is listed as Clara Ellison. I closed my eyes, feeling the air thin around me. Last spring, Clara had arrived with paperwork she described as routine tax simplifications. She had brought cookies, tea, and a notary. She held my arm gently when she guided me to the table. Just sign here, Mom. It will make things easier. You trust me, don't you? Easier for her, harder for me. And trust had been the knife she used. Mr. Ford wasn't finished. There's more. The authority granted to her isn't temporary, it's durable, meaning she retains full access even during potential incapacity, real or implied. Real or implied. Clara must have smiled when she read that clause. She always liked the kind of power she didn't have to earn. I leaned against the counter, steadying myself. Can you confirm the exact scope? He took a breath. Full control over property management, account transfers, and approval for financial transactions up to your entire portfolio if deemed necessary. A laugh slipped out, short, cold, humorless. Necessary, I repeated. Interesting word choice. He didn't respond. I walked back to the table and sat down slowly. The silver snowflake pendant rested against my collarbone, cool and steady. Henry's voice echoed somewhere deep in memory. Be careful with helpful people. I had ignored him. Worse, I had believed Clara when she pretended to be considerate. Mr. Ford cleared his throat. Mrs. Ellison, in cases like this, it's usually done by someone planning long-term control, sometimes even pre-establishing paperwork for future estate claims. Estate claims. She wasn't planning to inherit. She was planning to possess. I gripped the edge of the table. List every document she has access to. He started reading, slow and deliberate. Each line was another quiet strike. Property authorization, transfer approvals, portfolio access, estate automation, emergency transfers. By the time he finished, I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not heartbreak. Something cleaner, sharper, clarity. Mr. Ford spoke again. Would you like to place limits on her activity? Limits. As if Clara had ever respected limits. No, I replied calmly. I want every authorization suspended, every single one, effective immediately. He sounded relieved. Understood. I'll begin the reversal process. Before he hung up, he added, carefully, almost reluctantly, you should know, this kind of setup is rarely accidental. Whoever arranged it was preparing for something much bigger. My fingers tapped the table once, slow, controlled. Clara always prepares. She just never prepares for me. A silent beat followed. Respect, surprise, maybe both. We ended the call. I sat in the quiet for a long moment. The house felt different now. Not haunted, not lonely, just honest. Every shadow held a truth I hadn't wanted to see before. Clara wasn't just excluding me from a holiday dinner. She was building a legal cage and expecting me to step into it willingly, with a smile. I reached for the folder where I'd kept the printed transactions from last night. The pages whispered as I slid them onto the table. Evidence. Proof. Their intentions laid bare. They didn't just uninvite me, I murmured. They were unbuilding me. The snow outside thickened. A new stillness settled over the house, and in that stillness, something inside me stood up. Not physically, something deeper. A part of myself I had ignored for decades. The part that didn't beg for love. The part that didn't bend for approval. The part that understood that betrayal wasn't personal. It was strategic. And now it demanded a response equally strategic. I closed the folder and tucked it under my arm. If Clara wanted a game built on silence, paperwork, and precision, she just chose the wrong opponent. Julian Pierce's office sat on the corner of Maple and 4th, a brick building with tall windows and the kind of quiet that promised answers, not comfort. I walked in early, long before most people were done with breakfast. The receptionist recognized me immediately and gestured toward the hallway without asking any questions. My expression must have said enough. Julian stood when I entered his office. You don't usually come without an appointment. I don't usually have a daughter-in-law trying to rewrite my life behind my back. His eyes sharpened, not dramatic, just alert, the way someone gets when they realize the ground under your feet isn't steady anymore. Sit, he urged. I placed the folder of printed transactions on his desk. He flipped through the pages, his jaw tightening with each sheet. When he reached the last page, he leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. This is deliberate. Of course it is. Clara doesn't do anything halfway. He tapped the stack. This isn't casual misuse. It's strategic consolidation. I removed my gloves finger by finger, laying them neatly on the desk. She didn't just want access. She wanted ownership. Julian nodded once, leaning forward. We need to undo everything, immediately. I'm ready. He opened a file drawer and pulled out a thick binder labeled Reversal Procedures. It was heavy enough to sound like justice landing on the table. He flipped to the first tab. Here's the plan, he continued. We revoke the durable authority, freeze every account she can touch, reinstate you as the sole decision maker, reverse the property transfer, and file an audit request for every transaction they've made in the last 12 months. Good, I answered, steady. They built the trap. I'm just closing it. Julian gave a brief, humorless laugh. I've always admired your clarity. This isn't clarity, I replied. This is survival, dressed neatly. He began typing, fast and precise. I watched the screen reflect across his glasses, lines of forms, authorization clauses, legal footnotes. Every click was a stitch repairing something Clara tried to tear. As soon as we file these, he continued, they'll realize what's happening. People like Clara don't stay calm when control slips. That's fine. I'm not here to soothe her. Julian slid a document across the table. Read this. It detailed the full reversal of the house transfer, restoring Snow Pine Villa entirely to my name. The page listed timelines, notarization requirements, and court filings. Simple, clean, irrevocable. This is the part she'll hate the most, Julian commented. What part is that? The part where her entire plan collapses under its own greed. I lifted my gaze to meet his. Greed always overplays its hand. He nodded. And it leaves fingerprints everywhere. He handed me another document. This one freezes her access, effective the moment you sign. I skimmed the page, then the next. No hesitation rose in me, only a quiet satisfaction. Julian observed me for a moment. Most people cry during this process, or panic. I'm done with tears, I replied. They don't fix anything. He shook his head slightly, not in disagreement, just in recognition. You're stronger than most clients I've seen. Strength wasn't the plan, I said. It's the consequence. He didn't argue. Julian set a pen on the table, not a cheap one, a weighted metal pen, the kind lawyers use to signal that a signature matters. I picked it up, feeling its heft. You're sure? He asked quietly. I didn't blink. Certainty is the one thing they didn't manage to steal. He pressed his lips together, then opened a new tab on his computer. We'll need a witness, and a notary. I'll wait. While he made the calls, I studied the building across the street, the snow piling along its awnings, the faint reflection of the city waking up. It felt distant, like I was watching a world I used to belong to, but no longer needed. Julian returned. "They'll be here in 10. "Perfect." He sat again, folding his hands. "Nora, once we file these documents, there's no undoing it. The house will revert to you completely. She won't be able to touch a dollar, not a penny, not even utilities. Everything becomes yours alone." "That's where it should have stayed." He gave a slow nod. "I agree." I leaned slightly forward. "Julian, I want everything traced. Every dollar she touched. Every transfer. Every login. Every attempt to move money." He didn't even pause. "Already planned. That includes potential fraudulent filings with the county office." His eyes lifted. "You think she's gone that far?" "She brought the notary herself," I answered, and smiled the entire time. A flicker of anger crossed his face. Not for himself, but for me. "Understood. We'll document every detail." A knock at the door. The notary stepped in with a briefcase. Julian nodded toward the stack of prepared documents. "This is where everything changes," he said. "This is where everything returns to where it should have been," I corrected. He allowed himself a faint smile. "Fair enough." The notary laid out the paperwork. Page after page, each one sealing another doorway. Clara thought she'd locked me inside. My pen moved steadily. Signature, date, initials. No trembling, no hesitation. Precision, line after line. I felt something loosen in my chest, a knot I didn't realize had been sitting there for years. Not sorrow, not bitterness, something cleaner. Reclaiming. Julian gathered the signed documents with a firm tap, aligning the edges. "It's done." I exhaled slowly. Not relief, confirmation. "They're going to panic when they see this," Julian added. "Clara especially." "She can panic," I answered. "I'm done doing that for her." He slid the sealed folder toward me. "This is your copy. Keep it safe." I stood, picking up the folder. It felt heavier than paper, lighter than guilt. "Julian?" "Yes?" "When Clara realizes what's coming." I paused, letting the cold logic settle. "Make sure every door she planned to walk through is already closed." He nodded once, slow and deliberate. "Consider it done." I walked out of the office with the folder tucked under my arm. The cold air outside hit my face like clarity itself. They wanted to play with paperwork. Fine. I just rewrote the entire game. Snow tapped lightly against the windows that night. Small, steady knocks, almost polite, the way Clara pretended to be. I had just set Julian's folder on the counter when something brushed across the floor behind me. A faint rustle. Paper. I turned. A white envelope sat on the rug inches from my front door. No knock. No bell. Just the envelope, waiting like a trap that thought it was clever. Of course, Clara always preferred slipping knives in politely. I walked toward it slowly, every step measured. My house was quiet, too quiet for anything innocent to be happening. I crouched and picked up the envelope with 2 fingers. It was heavy, professional, freshly printed. A sticky note was attached on top, written in a cheerful, looping script I knew too well. "Just sign whenever you're ready, Mom. This will make things easier while we're away." My jaw locked. Easier for whom? The note smelled faintly of her perfume. Expensive, artificial, sweet enough to rot teeth. Clara never left anything without a scent or a motive. I carried the envelope to the table and slid the papers out. They unfurled like a long white tongue, full of clauses and legal language meant to lull an unsuspecting old woman to sleep. But I was wide awake. Page 1 looked harmless. Updated estate preferences. Page 2, simplified asset flow. Page 3, emergency financial delegations. By page 4, the tone shifted. Irrevocable authority, permanent control, full access to accounts, property, medical decisions, and title management. My breath stilled, not shaky, just steady. cold. This wasn't a request. It was a takeover. They weren't waiting for inheritance. They were manufacturing the moment. My fingers traced the signature line Clara had so generously highlighted in pale gold. She was even courteous enough to use a color that looked elegant instead of alarming. Theatrics, I whispered to the empty room. Everything she does is theater. I scanned deeper. The document referenced the very same durable authority Mr. Ford uncovered, buried inside paragraphs of streamlining and convenience. Clara must have been confident I wouldn't look past the first 2 pages. She thought I was still that mother who nodded along, soft, grateful, eager to avoid conflict. She really believed I'd let her manage my life the way she managed my calendar invitations. I smiled, slow, humorless. Clara underestimated the wrong woman. The snow outside grew heavier, and a draft slipped beneath the door like a warning. I sat down with the envelope and examined each page with the same focus I once used when balancing 2 jobs, a mortgage, and a child who never realized how much was being carried for him. The deeper I went, the clearer everything became. These papers weren't preparation, they were execution. She wanted control while I was still alive, control of my accounts, control of my home, control of every last decision that made me human, all wrapped in holiday politeness. My pen tapped the table once, then again, a small metronome marking the end of an illusion 2 decades overdue. A quiet voice in my head, Henry's voice, echoed the warning he once gave me. A smiling thief is still a thief, Nora. You were right, I murmured. The refrigerator hummed behind me. The heater clicked. The snow whispered against the glass. Everything ordinary, and yet nothing ordinary remained. I neatly restacked the documents, slid them back inside the envelope, and sealed it shut with a soft press of my fingers. Let them think I hadn't noticed. Let them believe I was still compliant. I placed the envelope back where it had been dropped, right in front of the door, exactly as if I'd never touched it. 2 can play polite. I moved to the kitchen sink, turned on the faucet just enough for the sound to fill the room, and used the noise to steady my breathing. Not fear. Strategy. My phone buzzed. Julian, I answered quietly. There's been an update. His voice sharpened instantly. More documents? Slid under my door. That's bold, he muttered. Send photos. I'll have Ramirez start a parallel file. Already done. And Julian? Yes? I want these filed as evidence. Formal, time-stamped, and duplicated. A pause. One of respect, not hesitation. Understood. They're building a case for control. We'll build a case for intent. Good. We ended the call. I stood still for a long moment, letting my eyes travel across the house. This house, my house, the one I earned before Clara was even old enough to balance a checkbook. The pendant around my neck caught the light just then, throwing a tiny silver flash across the counter. Snow light. A reminder. I wasn't the helpless one in this story. They were. Because anyone who has to hide their intentions inside fine print is already losing. I took a deep breath, slow and steady. Then I looked at the envelope one last time. They didn't want inheritance, I whispered. They wanted existence. Not today, not ever again. I picked up my coat. Julian had paperwork waiting. Ramirez had evidence to collect. And Clara? Clara had no idea the ground under her was already cracking. Let her enjoy her cruise. When she returned, the world she thought she controlled wouldn't belong to her anymore. Ramirez arrived sooner than I expected. A tall, calm man in his late 40s, carrying a slim black folder like it weighed nothing, though I knew exactly how heavy evidence could feel. He stepped inside with a quiet nod. Mrs. Ellison, I've reviewed the preliminary findings. Good, I answered, keeping my hand steady on the kitchen counter, because I'm not playing defense anymore. His mouth twitched, not quite a smile, more like acknowledgement. I suspected as much. Before he could continue, Marion pushed through the door carrying 2 coffees, her eyes sharp and protective the way only old friends get. I brought caffeine and judgment, she muttered, setting 1 cup in front of me. Both are free refills. I almost laughed. Almost. Ramirez laid several sheets across the table. Your daughter-in-law left a trail so sloppy, I'm honestly offended on behalf of criminals everywhere. Marion leaned in. Told you she was sloppy. Fancy hair, empty head. I felt the smallest flicker of satisfaction. Show me. Ramirez tapped the first document. She used your retirement fund to pay off her private credit card, then opened an investment account under her maiden name, but linked to your tax ID. That takes arrogance and stupidity. Stupidity? Marion huffed. That woman couldn't outsmart a parking meter. Ramirez continued, placing a second sheet down. Here's the bank's digital log. She linked herself as secondary owner on your checking and savings. She assumed you'd never look. I stared at the highlighted entries. Months of withdrawals, tiny enough to blend into ordinary expenses. A steady bleed meant to go unnoticed. Marion whispered, She thought you were old and harmless. No, I corrected softly. She thought I was obedient. Ramirez nodded once. And that's the mistake she'll regret. He slid the next page forward. Property documents. This one's important. She's been positioning herself to justify a future claim to the house, acting as if she's already half owner. My jaw tightened. And Nathan? Ramirez didn't answer immediately. That silence was answer enough. Marion clicked her tongue. Your boy didn't just drink the Kool-Aid, he mixed it. There it was, the sting I'd refused to feel earlier. It didn't break me this time. It sharpened me. Ramirez folded his hands. What you have here is a pattern of financial grooming, slow, calculated, and disguised as help. Help, I repeated, tasting the bitterness. The kind that empties your pockets while smiling to your face. Marion leaned back in her chair. So what's the move, Nora? You've got the proof, you've got the lawyer, you've got the backbone. What's next? I didn't answer immediately. My eyes drifted toward the empty mantel, the place where that framed housewarming photo used to sit, the one I'd taken down the moment I saw the first unauthorized withdrawal. That picture stayed up for too many years, I murmured. So did my silence. Ramirez straightened. Then let's use the silence as leverage, not surrender. Marion grinned. Now that's a line I like. I kept my gaze locked on the evidence spread across the table. Every page was a confession Clara didn't know she'd made. Every transfer a breadcrumb leading straight to her arrogance. They think they're playing chess, I said quietly, but they never noticed I stopped being a pawn. Ramirez's voice lowered. If you want to move forward aggressively, you'll need full legal lockdown, power of attorney revoked, house reversal, asset protection, the whole board flipped. Marion crossed her arms. Then flip it. Flip the damn board. I inhaled slowly, letting the moment settle, letting the power settle. Do it, I told Ramirez. Freeze her out of everything. His eyes sharpened with approval. Then consider this the start of your counterstrike. Marion raised her coffee cup. To Nora, she said, the woman they underestimated. I lifted mine. To the last mistake Clara will ever make. Ramirez gathered the documents, forming a single organized stack. My future, rewritten on paper. Their future, collapsing between the lines. He looked at me one last time. Ready? Oh, I've been ready, I replied. They're the ones who should worry. Ramirez didn't usually call twice in one day. So when his name lit up my phone that evening, my pulse sharpened, not with fear, but with that cold clarity I'd grown comfortable with. Marion was still in my living room, folding laundry just to keep her hands busy. She glanced over. That him? It is. Then pick up. Good news or bad news, we want both. I answered. Go ahead. Ramirez wasted no time. I pulled the deeper files. You'll want to hear this sitting down. I'm fine standing. A short pause, like he understood exactly what that meant. All right. Clara made new moves last night. Quiet ones. She thought nobody would check. Marion muttered under her breath. Of course she did. Queen of stupid decisions. Ramirez continued. She contacted 2 lenders, both private, both high risk. She's trying to push a second mortgage faster than we assumed. My grip tightened around the phone. She's accelerating. Yes, because she believes you're still passive. Marion scoffed loudly. Passive? Honey, someone's about to meet the new Nora. Ramirez lowered his voice. There's more. The air felt heavier. She filed something else, an authorization request to move your investment holdings into a joint management account. She used digital notarization. Forged. Marian's mouth dropped. She forged a notary? That's not arrogance. That's a medical condition. Ramirez added, she also submitted a preliminary request to access your long-term healthcare policy. It was rejected, but the attempt is documented. Heat rose in my chest. Not rage, not panic, just a clean, surgical focus. She's preparing to replace me while I'm still breathing, I murmured. And she expected you not to notice, Ramirez replied. Marian stomped her foot. I swear, if stupidity were a sport, she'd medal. Ramirez cleared his throat softly, his version of tension. There's one more piece. You need to hear it. Go on. She transferred funds from your account into a trust under Nathan's name. Only a small amount, just enough to make it look like a family planning deposit. This is the kind of breadcrumb she'd point to later to claim you gave financial consent all along. Marian let out a slow whistle. She really thought she could bury you alive with paperwork. I stayed silent for a moment, calculating, not shaken. Timeline? She did all of this within the last 48 hours. She's moving fast because she assumes she has time. That was her first mistake, Marian snapped. Ramirez added, we can still lock everything down, but you need to authorize immediate action. Done, he continued. One more detail. You're going to enjoy this part. Marian perked up. Please tell me she incriminated herself on camera. Better, Ramirez replied. She used her personal email for every fraudulent submission. No burner accounts, no VPN, no attempt to cover her tracks. Her digital fingerprints are everywhere. It's the cleanest self-incrimination I've ever seen. Marian cackled. She robbed you with the finesse of a toddler with chocolate on its face. Ramirez added, and the lenders? They flagged her for suspicious behavior. They didn't contact her yet, but they submitted it to internal review. If this escalates, that's another hammer. So she thinks she's untouchable, I murmured. Perfect. That's the beauty of arrogance, Ramirez replied. It makes people sloppy. Marian leaned forward, practically vibrating. Nora, with this much evidence, you don't just win. You bury. A quiet calm settled in my chest, steady and cold. Ramirez, I asked, how bad does this look for them? For Clara, catastrophic, he answered. For Nathan? Depends on how long he's been pretending not to see, but the trail ties back to her. Marian nodded. Good, let the witch burn alone. I didn't respond immediately. My voice came out even, level. Proceed with full lockdown. Freeze every channel, every access point, every authorization. Already in motion, Ramirez answered. By morning, she won't be able to access a single cent, a single document, or a single login. Marian clapped her hands once. Merry damn Christmas, Ramirez finished. And Nora, once this locks in, there's no going back. I'm counting on that. He paused. Then prepare yourself. For what? For signing day, Ramirez replied, the moment everything becomes irreversible. A thin smile tugged at my mouth. Good, I whispered. Let's end this. The courthouse smelled like old paper and colder judgment. Exactly what I needed. Julian was already waiting by the elevator when I arrived. Crisp suit, file in hand, expression unreadable, but his eyes flicked with that subtle respect I kept earning day after day. You're early, he noted. Early means ready. Good. Today ends their access. Permanently. We walked down the long hallway together, quiet, deliberate steps echoing off the marble. This wasn't fear. This was closure wearing legal shoes. Inside the conference room, the notary stood at the table, arranging forms with clinical precision. Julian placed the thick folder in front of me. Everything we discussed, he said. Reversal, asset protection, emergency freeze, and the revocation of the power Clara forged. Marian burst into the room a moment later, slightly breathless. Sorry, parking was a nightmare, but don't you dare sign without me witnessing the historic moment. I smirked. Relax. You wouldn't miss the fireworks. The notary glanced up. Whenever you're ready, Mrs. Ellison. And the first document lay open. Clean type, ironclad clauses, my name, their names. It felt like staring at my past and my future on the same page. Julian leaned in. This locks the house back under your ownership. No appeals, no shared authority. Marian nudged my shoulder. Do it. Make that woman choke on her own entitlement. My hand hovered over the signature line, not shaky, not hesitant, just savoring the moment. Then the pen touched the page. One stroke, another, and another. Julian exhaled, barely audible. That's the first. Good, I murmured. I want every door closed behind me. The next document was even sweeter, the revocation of all access Clara had ever touched. Julian tapped it lightly. Once this one is signed, their logins die instantly. Bank, investments, utilities, all of it. Marian burst out laughing. Her face is going to look like she swallowed a lemon whole. I signed. Clean, sharp. The notary stamped each page with a heavy thud. The sound felt like justice landing exactly where it belonged. Julian slid the final packet toward me, 40 pages thick. This is the irreversible part, he explained. House reversal is done, but this locks every future avenue. She can't petition for control, can't argue incompetence, can't modify power of attorney, can't claim dependency. Nothing. Marian whistled. Translation: she's legally dead to you. Julian didn't disagree. Close enough. The final signature space waited. My fingers tightened around the pen. She thought she'd erase me. Marian fixed her eyes on mine. Now you erase her. The pen glided across the page, and with that last stroke, the room felt lighter. My lungs expanded like I'd been underwater for years and just reached the surface. Julian gathered the documents carefully. It's done. Every channel is sealed, every loophole closed. The notary added her final stamp. Loud, final, unforgiving. Congratulations, Mrs. Ellison. Marian grinned. Oh no, honey. Congratulations to Clara. She just earned herself a humiliation she can't refinance. Julian straightened. There's one more thing. Ramirez sent a message. I raised a brow. Go on. He found another fraudulent transfer. Small but unnecessary for our case. You're already protected. So why tell me now? Julian's lips curled. Because it means when she tries to sneak back into your accounts today, she'll get locked out in real time, and she won't know why. That's going to trigger panic. Marian clapped. Perfect! Let the meltdown begin. We stepped out into the chilly afternoon air. Snowflakes drifted down, soft and indifferent. I tightened my coat, feeling the cold settle on my skin, but nothing touched the heat inside me. Julian walked me to the curb. From here on, Nora, the next move is hers, and whatever she does will only bury her deeper. Good, I replied with quiet steel. I want her to feel the fall. A car horn blared somewhere down the street. Life moved on, fast, loud, unbothered. But I wasn't thinking about the world. I was thinking about the driveway, about the moment they'd return, about the reckoning waiting for them like a brick wall they never saw coming. And I welcomed it. The morning their cruise ship returned, the whole neighborhood felt sharper, colder. Even the snow on the pavement looked like it had waited specifically for this confrontation. I parked a block away, far enough not to be seen, close enough to watch everything unfold. At 10:42 a.m., their SUV turned onto Snow Pine Drive, and just like I planned, nothing looked the way they left it. 2 unfamiliar cars in the driveway, a moving van, a young couple on the porch laughing with a realtor. Clara stepped out first, sunglasses perched high like she was still on the deck of that ship. Nathan followed, dragging luggage, barely awake, scrolling his phone. Then they froze. Clara's jaw dropped. Nathan blinked, confused, like the house might magically explain itself if he stared hard enough. Mrs. Cole, the realtor, turned at the sound of their door slamming shut. She smiled warmly at the young couple and gestured them inside. Their home, their dream property, their untouchable asset. All gone, replaced, reassigned, and legally transferred hours before. I stepped out of my car and began walking toward them. Slow, measured, a winter execution. Nathan spotted me first. "Mom?" His voice cracked. Not with affection, fear. Clara snapped toward me like a threatened animal. "Why are there strangers in our house?" I reached the driveway, letting silence stretch between us. Silence that used to protect them. Now it crushed them. "You won't need to worry about managing anything for me anymore." Clara took a step forward, fury rising in her face. "What does that mean? Why are people moving into our home?" The front door closed behind the new owners. A soft final click. I finally answered. "Not your home, not anymore." Nathan's complexion drained. "Mom, what did you do?" Clara shoved him aside. "No, absolutely not. You have no right. We have refinancing paperwork, contracts, appointments." "You had fantasies," I corrected, "not contracts." I reached into my bag and pulled out the thick folder Julian prepared. The reversal documents, the sale, the investigator's report, copies of her transfers. Everything. I placed it against Nathan's chest. He caught it clumsily, his hands shaking. "Open it." Clara lunged to snatch it, but I stepped back. "By all means, read your work." Nathan flipped through the pages, each one landing like a hammer on his expression. Shock, horror, realization. Clara ripped the papers from him and skimmed the pages fast. Full reversal, notarized sale, fraud documentation, unauthorized withdrawals, power of attorney abuse, mortgage attempt flagged as deceptive. Her face twisted, rage blending with panic. "None of this is valid. You can't twist things like this and pretend we—" I cut through her words like ice. "You drained my accounts behind my back. You mortgaged a house that wasn't yours. You tried to gain permanent control over my life while pretending to bring me holiday pies." Nathan staggered. "Clara, is this true?" She barked at him. "Don't get weak now. You knew about the renovations. You knew everything." He flinched. "Not this." I stared at him. "You didn't want to know." Clara threw the folder on the ground, papers scattering across the snow. "You think you can erase us? Overreact like this? We're family." "Family doesn't bury legal traps under welcome notes." She jabbed a finger at the house. "You stole our home." I lifted my chin, steady. "You tried to steal my life." Mrs. Cole stepped forward politely, hands clasped. "Mr. and Mrs. Ellison?" "The property transfer was finalized this morning. The new owners have full legal possession." Clara rounded on her. "You don't understand. That's our home." Mrs. Cole remained professional. "It isn't. Not as of 9:12 a.m. Clara looked seconds from combustion. Nathan reached for her arm, but she shrugged him off violently. "No, no, no, no! You can't do this to us. We built our life around this house." "You built your life around my money," I corrected quietly, and I stopped paying the bill. Clara's face hardened, calculating, vicious. "We'll take you to court." I lifted a second folder. Thinner, deadlier. "If you try, every page inside this becomes public record." Clara hesitated. I handed the folder to her. She snatched it, flipping through the documents. Every unauthorized transfer, every fraudulent login, every attempt to alter my accounts, every unapproved debt under my name, every screenshot, every timestamp, every signature she tried to bury. Her breathing grew uneven. This is all twisted." "It's your handwriting," I said calmly. "Your accounts, your devices, your fingerprints." Nathan's voice cracked. "Clara, what did you do?" She whipped her head toward him, furious. "Don't you blame this on me. You were fine with everything when the money was flowing. You never questioned a thing." His shoulders collapsed. For a moment, for a single beat, I saw the little boy he used to be, lost, confused, looking for someone to tell him the truth. I met his eyes. "You banned me from Christmas dinner. You let her treat me like a burden. You let her spend everything I worked for and called it helping. You made me small so your life could feel bigger." His lip trembled. "I didn't mean—" I raised my hand, not loudly, not dramatically, just firmly. Stop. The word landed with the weight of a decade. You didn't mean to get caught. Clara broke then, not into tears, into claws. You can't just cut us off, she screamed. You'll end up alone. I smiled. A real one. Cold, clean, free. Alone, I replied, is better than being used. Her face contorted. Rage, fear, humiliation all tangled together. She looked at the house as if it might come back to her through sheer tantrum. It didn't. I turned away, letting the silence fall behind me like a door slamming shut. I didn't need to watch the rest. I didn't need to see them unravel. Their empire had already collapsed. I simply walked away from the ashes. My boots crunched in fresh snow. Wind swept across the driveway like applause. The world felt quiet, finally quiet in the right way. When I reached the street, I heard Nathan call out behind me, "Mom, please." I didn't turn. He remembered he had a mother only after the house vanished. I kept walking, and for the first time in years my steps felt light. Clara was the first one to break. Of course she was. The moment the new owners stepped back inside my former house, her face snapped into something twisted between shock and fury. She grabbed Nathan's arm so hard her knuckles whitened. "This is insane. Make her fix it. Nathan, do something." He just stared at the folder in his hands like it could somehow rewrite itself. I stood a few feet away, still as winter stone. Not a tremor, not a flinch. My silence was the loudest thing on that driveway. Julian stepped forward just far enough to be seen, his presence calm, professional, unbothered. "Everything is executed legally. There's nothing to fix." Clara rounded on him. "You're her lawyer. Of course you're going to take her side." Julian didn't blink. "I take the side supported by the law. In this case, that isn't you." Her breath hitched like someone punched her. Then she turned back to me, fury cracking into hysteria. "You blindsided us. You blindsided your own son." Nathan looked up at me with hollow eyes. "Mom, please, tell me this isn't final." "It's final." His shoulders dropped. The last bit of fight drained right out of him. Clara jabbed a finger toward the house. "We have nowhere to go. Do you understand that? Nowhere." "You had a house," I replied calmly. "You just gambled it away." Clara's mouth opened, but nothing came out, like her brain couldn't keep up with the truth slapping her across the face. The realtor, Mrs. Cole, stepped out of the doorway then, her expression sympathetic but firm. "We'll need the driveway cleared within the hour. The buyers have a schedule." Humiliation hit Clara so hard, I thought her knees might buckle. She spun toward Nathan again. "Do something!" Nathan's voice cracked. "What am I supposed to do? She reversed everything. We can't touch the accounts. We can't even contest it without exposing all the transfers you—" "Don't you dare blame me," Clara snapped, her voice shooting up an octave. "You were fine with it when the credit cards were getting paid." His face hit the ground like he finally saw himself clearly for the first time. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The truth was tearing them apart faster than anything I could have spoken. Clara's hands shook as she flipped through the evidence packet again, pages rustling violently. "None of this is real. This is missing context. She twisted it. She set us up." I tilted my head. "If I set you up, you walked right into it with both hands open." Clara froze. The humiliation in her eyes, raw, sharp, almost metallic, was the kind you don't come back from. She took a step toward me. "You think this makes you strong? You think this is justice? You just ruined your own family." "That wasn't a family," I answered quietly. "That was a transaction." Silence. Heavy. Final. Even the wind paused for a second. Nathan finally broke it. "Mom, we can talk about this. We can fix—" "No." My voice didn't rise, didn't shake. It simply ended the conversation. "I'm done being your safety net." His eyes filled with something like panic. We made mistakes, okay? But we're still your family. Family doesn't erase you. Family doesn't steal from you. Family doesn't hand you a Christmas exclusion and call it love." Clara scoffed, but the sound came out weak and brittle. "You're being dramatic." Marion, who'd been standing beside Julian the whole time, let out a laugh so sharp it sliced the air. "Sweetheart, you haven't seen dramatic yet. You're watching precision. There's a difference." Clara barked a humorless laugh, somewhere between anger and desperation. "This is unbelievable. We're going to fight this. We'll get lawyers. Julian stepped closer. "Be my guest, but you'll be filing against recorded financial theft, forged authority documents, and a timeline of manipulation so clear a first-year law student could prosecute it, blindfolded." Clara's lips parted. No sound came out. Nathan rubbed his temples with both hands. "Clara, please stop." She turned on him sharply. "Don't you dare tell me to stop. This is your mother's fault." I raised a brow. "I didn't touch a single dollar, you did." Nathan's voice broke. "Clara, what did you do?" There it was. The collapse. Slow, then sudden, like the floor dropped out beneath their marriage. Clara backed away from him, eyes darting wildly. "Oh, so it's all on me now? You were perfectly happy letting me handle everything. Perfectly happy letting your mother pay for everything." Nathan's reply was barely a whisper. "I didn't think you were stealing from her." A sound came out of Clara, a half scream, half sob, her control fracturing one piece at a time. "I did it for us!" "For us?" Nathan echoed. "Or for you?" Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Nothing came out. I watched them unravel, not with joy, not with vengeance, with clarity, cold, clean, necessary. Ramirez stepped up beside Julian. "Ma'am," he said quietly, addressing me, "final report delivered. The case is officially closed on your end." "Good." My voice stayed even, solid. "I'm finished here." Clara lunged forward suddenly. "You can't just walk away." "I already did." Nathan's breathing grew fast, shallow. His hands shook. "Mom, please, don't leave like this." "You left first," I replied. "You just didn't notice when you did it." His face crumpled, grief mixed with realization. It was the first honest expression I'd seen from him in years. Clara whispered sharply, "We'll be alone." "Alone," I answered, "is better than being owned." Marion touched my arm lightly. "Ready?" "More than ready." I turned, walked, didn't look back. Behind me, Clara's voice cracked into a scream, Nathan's into a plea. Their marriage, once united by entitlement, shattered on that driveway piece by piece. By the time I reached the end of the street, the wind drowned everything out, and I felt lighter. Not vindicated, not triumphant, just free. The apartment was quiet when I walked in, real quiet, not the strained silence that used to hang over that villa they thought would be theirs forever. This was different. This was mine. I set my keys on the counter and let the soft hum of the heater settle around me. The air smelled faintly of pine from the little tabletop tree I decorated the night before. Nothing grand, nothing expensive. Just enough to feel like I had chosen something for myself again. For the first time in days, my shoulders loosened. The phone buzzed where I'd left it upside down. I didn't move. The world could wait. Snowfall brushed softly against the window, a white curtain drifting in slow motion. I walked toward it, each step unhurried. Outside, the street lamps cast a silver glow over the quiet sidewalks. A few kids ran down the street in wool hats, bouncing between snow piles, laughing without any idea how loud their freedom sounded. My reflection appeared faintly on the glass, older, wiser, finally unburdened. I touched the silver snowflake pendant at my neck, the one Henry gave me the year Nathan learned to walk. He would have been proud of how still I stood, how quiet, how I didn't let the storm inside my family drown the woman he loved. The phone buzzed again. I finally glanced at it. Nathan. Of course. Mom, please, we can fix this. Can we talk? I'm sorry. I read it once, then again, letting the words sit there on the screen like they were begging me to rewrite history for him. The apology wasn't for me. It was for the life he lost 10 minutes after stepping off that cruise ship. Another message appeared. Clara pushed everything. I didn't know it was this bad. I never wanted to hurt you. My thumb hovered over the phone for a long second. Not because I was tempted, because I wanted to remember this moment exactly. The second my son realized I wasn't a resource anymore. The second he reached for me, not out of love, but out of need. I placed the phone face down again. No anger, no tears, just a clean exhale. I walked to the small dining table near the window. Only one chair sat there. One plate, one cup. A simple meal waiting to be warmed. Peace didn't need company. A soft knock came at the door then. Marian didn't wait for an invitation. She slipped inside with a small bag of pastries and a knowing smile. "You look 10 pounds lighter," she murmured, hanging her coat. "Feels more like 50. She laughed softly and joined me by the window, her hands wrapped around her warm cup. "You handled it, Nora. Clean, surgical. I've never seen anyone reclaim their life that quietly." I shrugged lightly. Noise never helped me. Paperwork did. "That driveway," she shook her head in awe. "The way you stood there. Clara didn't even know where to look." My lips curved just enough. Humiliation is louder when you don't raise your voice. She nudged my arm. "And now? What's next?" The question wasn't heavy. It wasn't invasive. It was just real. I turned my gaze toward the snowy street again. I'm not running anymore. I'm not waiting to be chosen or needed or tolerated. Marian nodded slowly. "You're finally choosing yourself." It took long enough. We shared a quiet laugh, the soft kind that lands gently between two women who've lived enough life to recognize a turning point when they see one. When she left a short while later, the quiet returned, but it didn't feel empty. It felt like the walls were breathing with me. I walked to the small shelf near the window. On it sat the locket Henry gave me decades ago, the one with the tiny engraving of our first home. "I did it," I whispered to it, not expecting an answer. "You'd have told me not to wait so long." The metal felt cool against my palm, grounding, familiar. I moved through the apartment slowly, touching little things I'd placed with intention. A soft blanket on the couch, a framed photo of Henry and me laughing in the yard, the modest plant near the window reaching toward the light. Everything here existed because I chose it, not because someone expected it, not because someone needed it. The phone lit up again. I ignored it. Eventually, curiosity tugged at me. One more glance. Nathan again. "Mom, I'm begging you. Please don't cut me out. You're all I have." I breathed out through my nose. Funny how people remember who you are the moment the free ride ends. I typed nothing. Snowflakes tapped softly against the glass, a rhythm that slowed my heartbeat. I stepped closer, letting the cold light touch my face. The world outside glowed silver. Quiet, steady, honest. I traced the snowflake pendant again, feeling the cool metal against my skin. "Quiet isn't weakness," I murmured. Henry's voice lived somewhere in the memory that followed, soft, warm, proud. "You always had more strength than you believed." The tears didn't come, not the way they once did, just a warmth behind my eyes, gentle and clean. I breathed deeper than I had in years. In the reflection, I saw someone I hadn't met in a long time. A woman no longer bent by expectations, no longer quiet out of fear, quiet out of wisdom. My phone buzzed one last time. A voicemail. I let it sit. Some messages don't deserve to be heard. I turned off the living room light and let the soft glow from the window guide me toward the bedroom. The snow kept falling, slow, silver, peaceful. For the first time in a long time, sleep felt like something welcome, not an escape, a beginning. I pulled the blanket over my shoulders and let my eyes drift closed to the sound of winter settling outside. Freedom had a sound after all. It was silence, and that was the winter everything changed for me. I didn't fight, I didn't shout, I didn't try to win anyone back. I simply chose myself, maybe for the first time in decades. Life gets quieter as we get older, but that doesn't mean we fade. Sometimes quiet is where we finally hear our own strength again. If you're listening to this and you've been carrying too much, taking care of everyone but yourself, I hope my story reminds you of one thing. You're allowed to walk away from the people who only stay for the benefits, but disappear when it's time to show love. Thank you for spending your time with me today. It means more than you know. If this story touched you, feel free to like the video, subscribe, or leave a small comment, even just telling me where you're listening from. Your support helps these stories find the people who need them most. Until next time, take care of yourself, stay warm, and remember, quiet isn't weakness. Quiet is wisdom. See you in the next story.